I'm Farhan Dalla, transformational trainer, and welcome to Elevate Your Life, a transformational podcast, an invitation to take the journey towards your deepest self. It is my intention to inspire you to connect, move, and meditate. We'll tap in, tune in, and dive in, and together learn and reflect from authentic, real, and transformative conversations. Let's get started. Hello, everyone. Today I have a very special guest, someone who has had a huge impact on me, and we're only meeting today for the very first time. Though we've been communicating on Instagram, I want to introduce you today to Rizwan Jagani. Wait till you hear his bio. Maryland-based Rizwan Jagani is an American violist of Indian and Pakistani heritage and is thrilled to be performing at this year's Indian American Impact Gala. Jagani has built a career on reimagining what the viola can do by combining his formal training in Western classical performance with other musical genres such as Bollywood, musical theater, pop, and rock. He is an accomplished solo artist, orchestral and chamber musician, and educator. Some of his career highlights include making his Broadway debut for the South Asian comedic icon Zarna Garg, who I think is completely hilarious, by the way. So that was during her Christmas shows at the Carnegie at the Carnegie on Broadway, in addition to her New Year's Eve shows in Washington, D.C., performing as principal violist at the Catholic University Symphony Orchestra during his concerts at the Strathmore Hall and the Terrace Theater of the Kennedy Center, as well as performing at the Eisenstadt, did I say that right? Eisenstadter Summer Academy Festival in Eisenstadt, Austria. Is that right?
Eisenstadt.
Okay, thanks for correcting me on that. That was a bit of a tongue twister. But let me carry on. Jagani is a huge advocate for arts education in South Asian diaspora. In June 2019, after completing his master's degree, Jagani was invited to give a lecture recital in Karachi, Pakistan, in the Liaquat National Hospital and Medical College about the importance of the arts in one's life, the academic approach to music, as well as share his personal story. In 2022, he was invited as a guest to the Aga Khan University in Karachi, Pakistan, to present at the Sixth Sense Forum, a lecture series geared towards presenting new ideas. He gave a presentation on redefining culture and professional norms from the lens of a South Asian American musician of the Western classical field. Jagani is currently pursuing a Doctor of Musical Arts degree from the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. He has attained a Bachelor of Arts degree from Austin College, a Master of Music degree from Carnegie Mellon University, and an Arts Diploma from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. Rizwan, welcome.
Hi, Farhan. Thank you so much for having me here today.
You're so welcome. I hope I did that bio justice, but I think by the time everybody meets you today, they'll have a really good idea of who you are and just how impressive of a person you are, not just in your career, but also as a person, a human being, a Muslim, and just a kind human being.
Thank you. That really means a lot to me. Thank you so much.
It's true. And I want to say that you and I have a bit of a Karachi, Pakistan connection because I did spend some time at the Aga Khan University myself. I
Oh,
actually
that's so cool.
yeah, in 1997. Were you born then, by the way?
Yeah, I'm 93. So,
Okay, so in 97, I volunteered at the Aga Khan University Hospital in the Department of Physiotherapy. And I went there right after graduating and finishing university. And that was my first official sort of job in the field of physiotherapy. And I spent about 6 months there.
that is so cool. Yeah, my my uncle works there right now in oncology, and so he was able to help me out with the Sixth Sense Forum, and it was a really cool experience getting to go there because their campus is incredible and the facilities are really fantastic.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's grown huge since I was there.
Mhm.
But having said that, Rizwan, I learned about you this past April as I was scrolling through Instagram and I came across a post on the Queer Muslim Project page. And I read your story. And as soon as I did, I knew that I had to connect with you. I reached out to you, I messaged you. But I want to share with everybody here today what you wrote in that post and why it grabbed me so much. The title reads, Gay and Muslim, it was not allowed. Growing up in Dallas, Texas, in a conservative Shia Muslim community was never easy. I now live in Washington, D.C. For years, I had a strained relationship with Allah and Islam. I felt like I was not a true Muslim and that I did not belong to the faith. Oh, sorry, this is tough. A few months ago, I finally accepted my sexuality, and when I did, I grew closer to Allah. I recognized that Allah made me this way and that I was not a mistake. A gay Muslim, a violist, and friend. During this month of Ramadan, I hope to strengthen my love for Allah and further understand my purpose in this world. I knew that music was one way I could change the world, but maybe I was meant to do more. For all those Muslim boys who feel different in a world where it is not celebrated, can finally feel seen. To my younger self, that you were a powerful being waiting to shine. Like, how beautiful was that?
Thank you.
I just want to say right here, right now, that it's when I read that post that it was finally the motivation that I need to tell my own story and my coming out story, because it's been about 20 years and I've never publicly spoken about my coming out. It's not like it's a secret, it's not like I'm in the closet, but I just saw the courage and felt and the connection with you. And I thought, if he can do it, I can do it too. So it was important to have you on as my very first guest as we kick off Pride Month and talk about these issues. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah,
It's an
and there's,
honor. It's an honor. Thank you so much.
you're so welcome. And I have so much that I want to unpack here. So let's kind of rewind in your journey. And if you can start the conversation with, when did you first come out to yourself?
You know, part of it has always been like, I guess, innocent things. Like, you notice when you're a little kid, like, I guess, like, peeping at the underwear aisle, just look at all the Calvin Klein models. Um, or like, if you see someone changing, kind of like taking a peek, I guess. I felt like at the time it was more like a curiosity thing, and then I realized it was actually a little bit more of an attraction situation. And this is something I noticed when I was really young, but I just turned 30 back in January, and I didn't really accept myself until like the end of November of 2022. Um, I had kind of been grappling with the fact that it was sort of a part of me, but I could outgrow it, or it it was just something I always like. It was in the back of my head, but it was kind of like, oh, of course I'm gonna have a girlfriend. Of course I'm gonna get married to a woman. The culture will take care of that for me. If I don't find someone, they'll find someone for me, sort of thing. So I felt like I didn't have to worry. And then I kind of realized that, okay, this is a little bit beyond, kind of just an innocuous sort of part. This was a huge component of my life. And I think it was around 2015 when I like told myself, like, this is a little bit more than a phase, Rizwan. This is a
So
little
how
bit
old are you
more.
at that point?
I was 22.
Mm-hmm.
I was 22.
Okay.
Um, we can do the math right. Yeah. Uh, yeah, I
So
was
did you
22 at the
date
time.
girls by that, around that time or prior to that, or?
Yeah, I had
Mhm.
a relationship with a girl in my music class at undergrad. Um, and then like that went sour about 11 months in, and then I ended up pursuing men. It kind of like happened on its own immediately after. And at that point I thought it was sort of like, okay, this is a part that I felt in myself. Let me kind of go with it for a little bit and see how things go. Um, and then I realized it kind of like it just felt a little. It was just something that I guess was I guess okay with was the best way to put it. Um, and then it didn't hit, and I again thought that, oh, maybe it's more of a physical thing, not a romantic thing, because I was still convincing myself that romantically I wanted to be with women. Um, it wasn't until 2016 where like I was emotionally heartbroken by a man, and I was like, this is more. and I still don't know how to handle it. I still don't know what it means. I'm, playing all these mental gymnastics, and then like I always considered myself like a good practicing Muslim. Like when it came to things like doing Ramadan, trying to pray 5 times a day. I mean, I still struggle with it. Like I get tired and I fall asleep before I can pray the evening prayers. It happens. I know it happens to everybody, but I was like, this always was lingering. And so it was around 2015, 2016 when I realized this was a little bit more than just a phase. But it took me until 2022, late 2022, to sort of accept that, I had been made this way. And like, I remember like going on the prayer mat, finally starting to pray again because I was getting ready for a religious trip. And I was like, you know what, if I'm going to go on this trip and all of my friends have been encouraging me that I can go on this trip, I thought that, let me start praying again because I wasn't really praying that much. So I was on the prayer mat and I said, Allah, you made me how you made me. I'm going to fully put my heart and soul in that idea, but you better start blessing me. And then more and more, like I saw my life starting to have a little bit more clarity. I
Mm.
think one of the things I pray for the most is clarity. So like I think it finally dawned, like hit me on like November 2022 that this is who you are, and that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
It's
What
like
was the journey like to get to that point where you could, in what you describe as self-acceptance?
it was a lot of, I got to say, talking to different people. It really helped when I spoke to other queer people who were spiritual. I will say it's very hard to find other queer Muslims.
Mm.
It's almost impossible, because we're sort of given this, like here's the red door, here's the blue door. Red door is you be gay. The blue door is you be Muslim. Like there's no door in the middle that takes you to the same where the paths meet together.
Mm.
Um, so a lot of the people I spoke to were non-Muslims, but were very rooted in their faith, but also queer. And I think having that support really, really helped. Um, I also regularly participate in support groups by Desi Rainbow Parents and Allies, which is an organization by Aruna Rao, and it's for people like me, and even expands to their parents and families. So I'm hoping one day my parents can like partake in stuff like that, so they can gain different perspective. Um, but it was a lot of like talking to different people, understanding, working through the feelings, therapy. Um, to get to where I am today, am I still, going through all of those emotions? Yeah. But it's nice to be on the other side of always doubting myself. Now it's more like, okay, this is who you are, and let's find your place in the world versus finding myself first.
And I think when you wrote that post, immediately at the top, when I saw the words gay and Muslim in the same sentence, to me, that was huge progress because those are two words that are never said together, let alone written or something that you would read about. And when you started your post that way, I was like, he's got my attention. Where is he going with this? And I was so in awe of what you wrote because it was so honest, and very brave. And you set a very powerful intention for Ramadan. Why was it the right time to come out publicly during the holy month of Ramadan? And again, I want to reiterate that was a very brave thing to do.
Thank you. So for me, like I always had a love-hate relationship with Ramadan because it was this idea that, during the day when you fasted, it was kind of like, okay, let's be good Muslims. And then it's like when you break the fast, it's kind of like a little hint of normal life returns because, you can eat again, you can kind of move about. When you're fasting, it's kind of like, it's a lot more introspective, your energy is lower. So you kind of play to that. Um, and I always remembered other Muslim friends when they talked about the excitement of Ramadan, that like, oh my gosh, oh my goodness, Ramadan is coming. For me, it was always full of dread. Or like when Ramadan was halfway and people were like, oh my goodness, we're already halfway through the month. Where did it go? For me, it was like, okay, I cannot wait for this month to end. Because I always felt like, it was always very conflicting because I never felt like I deserved the month's blessings. I was like, being me as me, I that automatically labeled me as a bad Muslim, or in some people's eyes not even a Muslim. So I was like, why am I here? So I felt like on the most important day of the, like the first day of the most important month of the Islamic calendar, I saw this as a moment of me coming into my own power, because I feel like as South Asians, when we're so hugely part of a greater culture, a greater community, we don't have our own individual power. And this was me coming into my own individual power in a month where we find our own spiritual power. And I didn't know what the month was going to bring for me. I just knew that I wanted to make it special. And that was why I felt like that was the time for me to share this part of my life with the world, because it what better than a month where, as a Muslim, I can like build my life a little bit and focus on spirituality and focus on strengthening myself as someone who has gone through this whole battle already. And it's like, okay, I am ready for Ramadan after having gone through this. And that was the reason why I picked Ramadan to sort of re- disclose this information publicly.
Yeah, I mean, you could have kept that to yourself, but you chose to go on Instagram and tell the world what you were doing at a time where Muslims all around the world were stepping into the holy part of the practice of what it means to be Muslim for those 30 days or whatever it is. And I really admire you for that.
Thank
But
you.
as a practicing Muslim, how did you go from what you describe as a strained relationship with Allah to where you came out as gay and then it actually grew you closer to Allah?
I think it was this idea that I stopped fighting him. I remember like literally yelling at him on the prayer mat, being like, I don't want this. I don't want these urges. Like, take them away from me. Like, why am I made this way? And so I felt like I was being punished. I felt as though this was like, just an unfair test or unfair situation. So it made me wonder, it's like, what do I have to be grateful for to my creator? I mean, he's made me in a way that is going to like that I can't reconcile with personally, and that I'm going to struggle with in the community if they find out, or mannerisms, people's gaydar, if you will. They're going to like pick out these things, right? So no one's going to really feel as though, like, everyone's going to be like, oh, is he actually straight? Oh, is he? People love to talk, and our people can turn it into an Olympic sport if they wanted to. And so when I finally acknowledged that I was Allah's creation, and if in every verse of the Quran it says the most beneficent, the most merciful, those are words of kindness. Those aren't words of a creator who is actively trying to punish or, you know, put bad in someone's life. And so I thought of this as, this is me. Like, this is how I was made to be. And I should love my creator for that, because maybe something beautiful is going to come from this, whether it's my life or whether it's an impact on someone else's life. And I was like, but I said to Allah, I was like, you better start blessing me, because I need a sign that this is who I am. And lo and behold, like, I noticed things starting to open up. There was a lot more clarity. So I felt like that was where my relationship with God grew. It was like when I finally realized that this is who I am and this is how He created me, then I grew closer. It made me want to pray more. It made me want to think about Him more during the day, in the sense of, like, if I was facing a struggle, or especially with Ramadan coming up, I was like, that's the month where you really call upon, the blessings of God. So that's where I'm at today. And that's what took me to get there.
I concur. And I think what helped me to realize was that it just did not make sense to me that the power that created me would punish me for the way in which I was created. That didn't make sense to me. And if what created me can only be defined as love, then there cannot be any sort of punishment or hatred rooted in any of that. And so that's how I sort of came to terms with that. And much like you, what I love is that you created your personal relationship with Allah, because it is a personal relationship. It's only between you and Allah and no one else. Religion is there and it guides us. But at the end of the day, it's really what we feel in our hearts and the way we communicate. And I have my own, rites and rituals and my own forms of prayer. And my religion is there, and I do lean on it. And I do believe in the principles of kindness and doing good deeds and the very foundations that I think make us good people. But at the end of the day, my relationship, much like yours, is a very individual one with Allah. So I appreciate you for sharing that. You go on to say, though, at the beginning of Ramadan, I came out publicly. I set the stage for what this month was going to be for me. I set the intention for this month to be about survival, to survive my coming out journey with my family and other people in my life who would struggle to accept who I am, to survive being a doctoral student and professional musician, with engagements going way into the evenings where at times I was not eating or I had just broken my fast with dates and water. Every day I would put my faith in Allah and pray for strength, strength to get through the day, to be brave, to ask for power from the when I felt my soul became weak. While it was the Ramadan I was the most excited about, it was the one that was the most emotionally draining. I at times wondered what kind of test Allah was giving me during the holiest month of the Islamic calendar. Again, this is a very honest and vulnerable post, and I really admire you for sharing that. I think that anytime, anyone posts something in regards to making references to religion, it can be scary because it can be met with lots of negativity and backlash. But I don't even want to go there. I just want to emphasize that I understand being Muslim myself, how challenging it must have been for you to be so open and honest with this, like this way. But now that Ramadan is over, if you were to reflect back on your experience on that month, what did you come out learning about yourself?
So I realized that like I had power and strength within me. Maybe I just didn't believe that I did because I had a very busy performing schedule. And we take for granted that mid afternoon cup of coffee or cup of caffeinated beverage, or just the ability that when we nourish our bodies, we can recover faster and go from one busy day to the next busy day, even if it's something physically strenuous. Proper nourishment allows us to bounce back faster. And I was realizing that I didn't have that luxury. And the fact that I could still go through my busy days, sometimes I had like 3 musical engagements in one day, or the event at the Terrace Theater in the Kennedy Center. I had to break my fast in the middle of the concert. And I told my conductor, and so he was like, keep what you need to keep with you. I was sitting principal, so right up front, like audience can see me. Couldn't hide. So I had my dates, I had an energy drink. So we finished one piece. I quickly popped dates in my mouth, drank some energy drink, put the viola back on my shoulder, and played the next piece.
So
And
let me picture this. You're at the Kennedy Center, you're in an orchestra with I don't know how many band members, and it's the end of the piece, and you have to quickly break your fast, swallow some dates, take a few sips of an energy drink, and then go back to performing.
yeah,
Wow.
the good thing was they had it was kind of like a curated concert sort of thing. So in between each piece, there was some talking. So I had about 3 or 4 minutes to quickly do that. And so I was very, very grateful that I was able to. But the conductor even said that if you are still in the middle of it, I will hold it and then you quickly get ready to go. Which I was very grateful for Maestro Dekuf to say that to me because, I always think like as a Muslim in Ramadan, like I always feel like when I have to ask for a little accommodation, I always feel like it's an inconvenience. I think yeah, I feel like a lot of Muslims might feel that way. But this month actually reinforced to me, it's like, hey, this is who you are. You ask for whatever you might need, and the good people that are you are talking to will accommodate you. And so I thought about it a lot in the sense that I was able to do what I didn't think I could do, and that was have a busy musician schedule while still and that for me was spirituality, was the fact that like I could pray to Allah for that strength and find it within me and be reassured that you are doing the right thing, you know, and still praying 5 times a day. Could I have done a little bit more Quran? Yes, But I made sure that I, whatever dua or whatever prayer or whatever thing anything I was listening to or reading, I made sure that I really did it with full intention. Like I read the translation or understood its heritage. Um, because I didn't want to go about like, a Ramadan checklist. Like how many things did I do? I made it a point that whatever I was doing, it was with the purest and most like intense intentions. And music was one way of that because I felt like I was able to put my spirituality to the test in real life as, a Muslim musician because I'm the only Muslim in my school's orchestra. I'm also the only person of South Asian heritage in the orchestra. And for that particular concert, I was wearing shalwar kameez. So it was like really proper branding, if you will.
You
But
represented us really well, I want to
thank,
say.
thank you. So that's why I really thought about that. And I was like, this is what the month taught me. It was survival, but it was survival through spirituality, the self realization of who you truly are, the strong self that you can be when you need that strength, you know. And that for me was the love of Allah manifesting in the ability that, hey, I at times thought that maybe I won't fast on this day because it's going to be an intense day and I won't get to eat. I need caffeine, blah, blah, blah. I didn't need to worry. You know, I had someone guiding me and giving me that little extra push when I needed it.
Yeah, and just from my perspective, I want to say from hearing you speak, I don't think you survived, but you in fact thrived. If you think about who you are today and what that month brought for you, um, the strength that you leaned on, the lessons that you learned, the person that you became, the spiritual practice that grew with you and allowed you to keep that connection, just in my opinion, makes it sound like someone who actually thrived.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, it's true. Let's go to the end of Ramadan and it's Eid, and you continue to say in this post, my battle is not over. It's not even close. While dressing up for Eid is a fun time because I love fashion, this Eid felt strange. I could sense how much my story was sucking the joy from my parents' lives, particularly my mother. A time of joy was ridden with guilt and sadness. Dark thoughts entered my mind, and while I'm holding on to the light, I am scared of going back. However, I am still here today. Again, I love the honesty, and what you're trying to say here is that you haven't figured it all out, that you don't, in fact, have to have it all figured out. It's a journey, and I think that you learn as you go through it one day at a time, sometimes one step at a time, and often even maybe one breath at a time. So I get the sense that, there's still a struggle with where your family's at. But when did you come out to your parents and how did that conversation go?
So back in early middle March, I was going on ziyarat to Karbala in Najaf, Iraq, and it was a trip that for like Shias, it's a big deal. It was my second time going, and I was going by myself. The first time I went was with my parents.
Would you mind
And
just explaining that to our non-Muslim listeners, what that involves and what it means, please?
absolutely. So ziyarat is a type of pilgrimage specific to Shia Muslims, and I know non-Shias who have gone as well, but it is more particular to the Shia sect of Islam, and it surrounds multiple like locations where there are shrines commemorating important figures of Shia Islam. So Najaf is where Imam Ali or Hazrat Ali, if you're aware of this figure, um, he is interred there. And what's also interesting is in the Shia school of thought, they believe that Adam and Noah are also interred in Najaf. And then the city of Karbala is the site of a very important battle that took place that involved the grandson of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and the Umayyad Caliphate. So there are shrines there that commemorate Hussein, the grandson, and his half brother Abbas. And it's a very spiritual place. People go there, like people like dream of going there, or like, they say to go there is that you've been called to go there. And I remember going, I wanted, and I went on this trip for multiple reasons. It was for myself because of this internal battle, but also it was to prove to my parents that, hey, this might be who I am, but at the same time, it's like I'm still uh, like like Islam is in my heart. Being a Shia is still in me, and so this was a very important pilgrimage for me, and so that's what ziyarat is. Um, with regards to my parental involvement, I was planning on addressing this with them before I was going to go. And again, for like the reasons I mentioned, so that way they still see that Islam is a huge part of my life, but also to create some physical distance so they can start wrangling with those thoughts. I wasn't so lucky though. I was going to go see a show at the Kennedy Center with my family. It was Into the Woods. They were touring on Broadway. And one of the actresses, Stephanie J. Block, she does a podcast herself. And she had interviewed one of her co stars. And her co star had talked about his relationship with God and his sexuality. So I wanted to write her a thank you letter for, having that platform for this discussion to happen. And my mom peeped at the contents of my letter. And in the letter, I did mention the whole being a gay Muslim thing. And
Right.
so I essentially got outed to my mom. And I remember she wouldn't mention to me why she was upset that whole evening, but I knew she was upset. But I figured it out on my own because I saw that things were not in the order I had placed them, which was a symbol of a different issue, but I didn't want to, address that with her. So I decided, let me have a heart to heart with each of my parents. So I first talked to my dad. He, he's very chill, but he had his reservations, and understandably so. Now he's actually like my best friend. I can talk to him about almost anything. My mom is still wrangling with all the information. And I know it's going to take her a long, long time because what I've been hearing more and more from other people, especially mothers, they say that, when our child is born, we have dreams for them.
Mm-hmm.
And one of that dreams is like, their son finds a beautiful bride, they get married and they have children. And the thing is, that dream is essentially a loss that she is mourning.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think about the fact that like me being my authentic self is causing her being upset, it creates a lot of guilt and shame. And shame is something that we are taught so early on. It's so ingrained in us that it's like no matter how much therapy you get, you never fully make peace with some of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was sort of how this stuff got addressed to my parents. When I posted the stuff on Instagram and Facebook, I made sure to like block them from it so they wouldn't see it. And same thing with family members. But of course, there are people that told them that, oh, did you see what your child wrote? Or did you see what Rizwan wrote? Because again, gossip culture and South Asian culture go hand
Mm-hmm.
in hand.
Right.
So that was my experience with my parents and with my family.
Yeah, and one that I can somewhat relate to. And I know that it's like you said, when they learn the truth, they go through a grieving process because they have to let go of the image, the ideas, and the dreams of what it is that they knew their son or child to represent for them. And so they need time to reconcile with that. And I will continue to hold space for you to support you through that process. And
Thank you.
certainly what I can offer in terms of advice in this regard is very little because it's an area that I still continue to struggle with. But like I said, we don't necessarily need to figure everything out today, but we can lean on each other, support one another, and help each other through.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's the most important thing. Like you mentioned earlier, like a step at a time, a breath at a time. For me, it's been one moment at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think there's something beautiful in the idea that we can take time and condense it to even its smallest form and appreciate each one as it happens. Um, and like holding on to those things.
Yes, and living true to what you said in regards to that perhaps this is related to your purpose in this world, that who you're here to represent and how you're here to be of service. And I'm curious as to wonder if after you came out publicly, if you heard from other Muslim gay boys that were struggling and What sorts of advice did you have for them?
I haven't had that conversation just yet. Um, Although someone did follow me on Instagram because they read my story and, they DM'd me and said that, it's so nice to find someone else like me. I think that was huge because, again, I tried to find someone like me and I never could. I had a mom reach out to me who is from the conservative community from Dallas, Texas, where I grew up.
Wow,
And she,
okay.
and she said that, I hope that I can give my own children the space and the environment for them to be their true authentic selves in a conservative area. And around that time, back in Dallas, we had a few deaths in the community of male children around my age, all due to drugs. And people always wonder if there was like some underlying depression or some story or whatnot. Whatever their story is, maybe their story was rooted in something like this. And, maybe that was their only place of feeling somewhat safe. And I think this idea of sharing your story when you know that there are people out there who are too scared to could provide something huge. I was in Dallas over the weekend playing at a wedding where I've been hired to perform at, so I was flown down at the same community. So I was going literally into a Shark Tank because a lot of those people knew about me. And I was terrified. This was probably the hardest performance I've ever had to give. Not because of the musical material, but because of its circumstance. But I had two people who were queer, Shia Muslims, confide in me at this wedding. One
Wow.
person one person I connected with on Instagram, so they knew of me and wanted to meet me at some point. It was just a happy coincidence they were at the wedding. And another woman, um, and a woman who was also identified, as queer, and she was like, and she just told me, but they both said to me, "Your post gave us strength," and it made me realize one very, very important thing. And it's, again, everyone's at different points of their lives. But I think when you see a personality who identifies like you, that's one step. I can name a lot of queer South Asians. But when you understand their stories and you learn a little bit more than what's on the surface, I think that's where the connection happens. And
Mm.
that's sort of where the being seen happens. Because especially as a Muslim, that's the biggest thing for me was my story needing to be seen by other queer Muslims.
And from the lens of someone who's practicing and rooted in their faith, which I think is great. Um, it's it goes to show you just how important your post is and your story and what you're sharing. When I was coming out 20 years ago, there was no one that I knew that was queer and Muslim. There was no Instagram, there was no social media. There was no one on television that was queer or Muslim, anyone that I could see or identify myself with. And it was a very isolating and scary experience. And it still is for a lot of people, as you can see. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this podcast. I want people who are listening to this, who may be struggling, who are scared, to reach out. You have two voices here right now that are standing in our truth, that are standing in our power. And if you can see in us that you can be yourself to whatever degree you can in this moment, that if you could take one step to do that, if it means reaching out to Rizwan and I, we're here, we're listening. We've made ourselves available in a public sphere, which means that we care. And even if you think no one else does, just know that there's at least two people here that do.
100%.
I want to shift gears a little bit to a post that you wrote on April 7th. And I love this. It says, "In the month of blessings, that is Ramadan, I am grateful for this one. Last year, when I decided to pray again, I acknowledged that I was Allah's creation and I am meant to be who I am meant to be. However, I told him to start blessing me. Shortly after, I met Stephen. This amazing man who has shown me what love is, has stood by my side these turbulent weeks of coming out, has made beautiful music with me, has helped me become a better person, and has brought me closer to Allah. Thank you for being an amazing boyfriend, partner, and companion to me. I love you. Rizwan, you're blushing and no one can see that right now, but I can. You're turning so red. But you posted this, and again, like I commend you for going public with this relationship. So let's dive into this part of your life, your romantic life. Tell us about Steven. Like, what's it like to be in a relationship with a partner and to be in love?
You know, I was never the kind of guy who dated. I think it was just because like, growing up in a conservative Muslim family, it was kind of like you go to the mosque, men and women are separate. So it's like you never see someone of the opposite sex. And it's like, okay, you have to get married to a girl, but don't talk to the girls at school because if they're not Muslim, you can't marry them. So, but it's like, fast forward to your teens, it's like, okay, time to get married to a girl. But it's like, I don't even know how to talk to one. So it's like, did I turn out this way because I don't know? I always like to make that joke. I always like to make that joke. But Steve and I connected at the end of last year. Literally about 2 weeks after I had that conversation with Allah and said, better start blessing me
Okay, how did you meet though?
online, as
Okay.
one
Right.
does in this era. Um, and so our conversation went from like dating app to Instagram to texting,
Okay.
and we were going to meet, like, it was like December 14th we were talking, and we were going to meet on the 26th. And I told him, I was like, look, that's far away. I would like to not wait that long to talk to you. So I said, let's FaceTime. And we FaceTimed for about 3 hours on the first
So your
interaction.
first date is kind of over FaceTime. That's such a
Yeah.
modern relationship. You met online, your first date was on FaceTime.
Right. Like, I mean, I feel like,
I mean,
that's
you're a
one.
unique individual. Like, you're definitely like not conventional in many ways. So I wouldn't expect anything less of your romantic relationship. So here we are. Go
Here
on.
we
I
are.
love this story.
And so when we finally met in person, like, he said he knew the moment he met me, like, I was the one.
Wow.
As someone who hasn't had very many romantic relationships, and just in the fact that I didn't always date, it took me a few, it took me some moments to kind of like understand where my emotions were coming from, what I was feeling, and then it kind of all made sense. Um, it's been beautiful, and it's made me understand that, like, way modern pop culture portrays love as like material objects versus, the fact that he has seen me go through absolute mental gymnastics with my family, and him dealing with some of them in auxiliary because he's my partner. And also, like, there's no manual for stuff like this. So it's like I'm just thinking on my feet. Like, sometimes I'll say something and he may not understand, like, it may not make sense. And then we have to have a whole conversation about, like, why we may have to approach something a specific way. But the patience, the kindness, the listening, the empathy, these are all the things that I've always wanted with someone. And it's kind of just the sense of feeling at peace. And that's sort of what being in love feels like right now. It just is a sense of being at peace. And I will definitely say that, like, when he and I are together, we kind of forget the rest of the world exists, which is really nice because things get crazy here. So when I'm with him, it's like I can forget all about that.
Okay, I love the expression on your face, and I wish everyone can see it because you're gushing when you talk about him. And hopefully, when he hears this, he'll be like, "Yeah, I know that face."
Yeah.
So, have you seen the movie Breaking Fast?
It's Excuse me, it's on my list. I haven't
Okay,
seen it yet, but I've seen the preview for it.
okay. So, for those who don't know, it's a gay rom com, and it's about Mo, a practicing Muslim living in West Hollywood, and he's learning to sort of navigate life after a heartbreak. He goes through a breakup, and then he meets an American guy named Cal. But it so happens that when they meet, it's Ramadan, and so it is um the it's like their romantic start of a relationship, and it's Ramadan. And what happens is Cal helps him by breaking fast every day during Ramadan, and they eventually end up falling in love. It's a rom-com, it's a happy ending. But I thought about that movie when I read your post about Steven, and I was kind of wondering, how did you two navigate Ramadan?
So I had like some kind of specific boundaries just for the month, that I made him aware of, and I kept on telling him from the lens of, hey, even if we weren't dating, this is something I was upholding myself to. Um, and it was it was kind of like, again, moments at a time. Like, there's specific decorum rules you adhere to while you're fasting, of course. So I was like, this is the lay of the land. I'm gonna follow it just because we're dating. I'm not gonna budge on these things. I want you to understand that this is a very important time for me, especially at this point in my life. A little bit of, a little bit of growth pain, and that's normal. And I don't, and I, the fact that he went through all of this with me, I give him 100% credit for that. Um, and but the nicest thing was, like, when I was fasting, he would not eat or drink in front of me. Um, he is a vocalist, so of course, like, when he has to sing, he would obviously, drink water or whatever. But only the only situation when that would happen. But otherwise, he was like, we were exploring DC together and we were fasting. It was the first day we had met in Ramadan, so we were like running around doing things for hours, and we weren't. I wasn't eating or drinking, and he didn't do that either. Um, and I will say, like, in that, like, he always made it a point, like, to ask me, like, have you prayed, have you been a good Muslim today, and all that stuff. And like little things like that. And I think the other thing was, because I had someone that reassured me that, I'm a good person and all these things, and I'm a spiritual being, it was in a way also what helped me get closer to God in that way, was just sort of having someone else in my life that could reassure me of these things.
I love that. And does he have a religious practice or a spiritual practice that he follows?
So he was born into Christian faith, and with stuff that has happened in his life, he doesn't really practice that much now, but he does perform as a church musician. Um, However, I will say that in getting to know me, he has wanted to learn more about Islam,
Interesting. Okay.
which is really cool. And I have to always tell him, like, don't combine the culture that I grew up in with the religion. The two do go hand in hand, but that's because of how modern man has chosen to go about it.
Hmm.
But it's like, when you separate the two, especially all the crazy desi stuff, there's a lot of beauty that comes from the faith and what it preaches. And I think that is something that has interested him, and especially because of his Christian background, he finds all the similarities and then, like, subtle differences too. So we have connected over that, and that's been a beautiful thing too.
I love that. And I love how you separate the culture from the religion. So let's touch a bit about the culture a little bit. Did you introduce him to your parents, and what was that like?
So with my parents, he met them first being my musician friend, as one does. And because we met before New Year's, and New Year's was when he asked me to be his partner. Um, and so whenever I would go see him on the weekends, it was, I hated lying. I hated lying, but I would say that, I'm going for a gig with him.
Right.
And because it was so convenient that he's also a musician. Um, but
You're still a good Muslim, Rizwan. Don't worry about it.
I hope it's what I pray for, and hope for in my actions. But they found out, unfortunately, through that social media post, because a family friend shared it on their
Wait a
stories.
minute. You didn't tell them before you posted that?
No, because I was gonna warm them up to the idea
This
that
was your idea. Go public first and then tell them? I mean, come on. Did you?
I know. I
You have
know
to
you would
know
have
this
thought.
was not going to end well. But anyway, go on. Or maybe
Well,
it did.
I didn't know someone would put it in their story. That's the thing, and it would be like someone who was like a family friend.
Right.
Um, so then my mom saw the post and she's like, "Can you take that down?" And I'm like, "I don't know if I'm gonna take that down." Um, but now they have met them. They've met Steven. They've met him as my partner now, and it's a slow road.
Right.
My dad again is a little bit more chill. My mom is like, I don't know how I feel about this, but I told her I was like, I'm happy.
Mm.
I'm like, she's like, she thinks about it as like a right now situation as opposed to like I'm in it for the long run situation. And then I told her I was like, you can't guarantee a long run situation in every, like even in like a conventional heteronormative marriage.
Yeah.
Like you'll have the big wedding with all its grandeur, and then maybe things go south not even a year in. But everyone goes in thinking it's for the long run, and but like now things are a little bit things are they're getting better. I told him I was like, your parents love me, but they're also like 2 years on the other side of what you went through, and I might be dealing with much different things than you are because of just how the culture is. um South Asian culture, I feel like, thrives on gossip, and it's scary it's scary, but it's also hilarious because whenever you have like a visiting imam or like a religious speaker giving a sermon, they always talk about gossip. And it's
Hmm.
like they do, and my mom's always like, they always talk about this, and I'm like, they talk about it because no one's learned yet. It's like, keep things to yourself.
Right.
Don't have tea parties and then talk about all the and then spill tea. Like,
Hmm.
keep it in your cups and drink it. um
So I gotta
but
ask. I mean, we all have those aunties. I mean, if we're
yeah,
talking about the gossip culture, so did you have any response from, you know, the aunties that do all the talking? And
oddly enough, no.
okay.
A lot of the aunties actually were looking out for me. Some just didn't reach out, which that's also an action. Those are actions even of themselves. I think what hurt most was like through auxiliary. Like I would have, I visited a family friend over the weekend, and her son plays viola. So I gave him a lesson, and his mom was taking videos and pictures, and I was like, holding his shoulder up so that way he would have good posture, or like helping him with his hand. And like someone reached out to her and said that, like, he's gay. Why is he in your house? Like, don't you care about your children?
Wow.
And I'm like, it is 2023.
Right.
Like some of y'all have like one brain cell and it's getting lonely,
Hmm.
or like y'all need a hobby or something. And I think that hurt me more.
Hmm.
I had like family friends I had known for like 20 years, like, light up my DMs about like, what you're doing is like tearing your family apart, or like, this is not how Islam is. And I grew up knowing that they were very conservative people, so the actions didn't surprise me, but it
Yeah.
also alerted me that this wasn't someone I could reason with. So fortunately I had to, prune a bit and cut certain things out of my life.
Which happens. And I really get upset when people say this is not what Islam is, because when they say that, that is really their interpretation, because there really is no true context that says that. So, I mean, every person has their own belief systems, but to label it as Islam, I really find that very annoying.
It's problematic. A friend of mine, he was like born into Catholic faith, also a violist. He said like, it's like brand loyalty. Religion is like brand loyalty in a way, because like even within like one faith, you'll have so many different ideas, and you have different people that perpetuate different ideas, and those ideas have their following. So like even in the concept of any sort of same-sex relationship, you're going to have people that preach against it and will have their following, and the preacher will know what the following likes, so they keep giving it. Or even like on a broader scope, like, you'll have Pakistani people who like Urdu majlises as opposed to English. So they'll have their favorite Urdu speaker, and they'll always go to that speaker for their favorite Urdu majlis or something of that sort.
Mm.
And it's a matter of, I think, understanding that one, the faith is a lot bigger than we realize, in the sense of, like, the knowledge. We may not know everything, and not everything has sort of been unearthed even in its own right. And two, it's also looking beyond the worldview of the congregation you're sitting in. I was listening to an interview with Imam Dai Abdullah, who's a gay imam, and he said that when he lived in the Far East, he said Islam took on a lot of the ideas of Buddhism, because Buddhism was the practiced religion there. It had its way of working with the culture, and that whole mix worked into Islam. Versus how, like, when he went to Saudi Arabia and saw how Islam was practiced there, it had a lot more of the Arab culture elements. And so I feel like knowing that and being aware that there's a little bit more beyond than the walls of your own institution. There's a whole world of people celebrating out there in their own way, or praying or observing. And I just finished reading a book by Samra Habib called We Have Always Been Here, a queer Muslim memoir. And
Mm.
it is true. It's like we have always been here. It's just that our stories were never given those microphones to speak, or we
Yeah.
were never given the strength to pick up the pen and write the story, or in
Right.
my case, type it into the ether.
Which is why this is an exciting time. And for me to be able to be here 20 years later, to go from living a secret life to having a podcast and sharing our conversation and stories is huge for me and for you and all those that are coming up after us. So hopefully we are creating an opportunity for more people to open more doors so that they can speak their truth, write their truth, and just represent their truth without fear.
100%.
Mhm. Rizwan, you are an incredibly accomplished artist. And we could have a whole episode talking about your musical career. I've had a chance to listen to your work on YouTube. I love it. You are so talented.
Thank you.
You know, when I stepped into the fitness industry 30 years ago, there was not one brown person in the industry working in the fitness industry. I didn't have no one that I could look up to. There was no one on the cover of Men's Health, on television. It was a tough career to break into, but I persevered and I was fortunate enough to be in magazines, be on a television show, be on the Canadian Reebok team and travel the world and do fitness. But there was nobody there that looked like me. And so I was stepping into a field that I wasn't sure I was going to be accepted. What's it like for you? Like when you pursued music, was there anyone that was brown and queer that you looked up to?
Whew. That was a hard one, because I will say in high school, there was a time where it was like, okay, you're doing this now, you're going to start college, let's focus on something else. I did not take that. I was like, I still wanted to do viola. I had a lot of colleagues that, played viola, like played an instrument, and then they left it after a certain point because it was like academics, GPA, this, that, this, that. I still made it a point to keep viola part of my life, even though at that time I still wanted to, go into a very different academic field. Um, Nowadays, there's a whole group of us, and on Instagram, there's actually a hashtag called South Asians in Western Classical. And through that, I've met other violists. I have one friend who's also a violist, and he's also queer. There's actually a really funny thing about violists being gay. It's really funny, but it holds like 90% truth, at least I think. Um, but like I've met like opera conductors, composers, that are all South Asian. Finding their way in the field and making their own stamp, and that's been amazing because it's kind of cool in the sense that I do my own thing, but I'm one of many others doing their own thing. And it's like we all help each other out, we all support each other. Um, and I think just knowing that there's other people like me, even if they're not with me in the same room, I think it's just beautiful knowing. Um, in similar perspective, in Ramadan, I performed a piece called "The Armed Man" by Carl Jenkins, and it's a mass, so it's choir and orchestra. The second section of that piece is called "The Call to Prayer." There's no performing in the orchestra or the choir. but there's an offstage reciter who is doing the adhan. It's written into the piece. And I'm like, I'm a Muslim musician. I just had a big moment of my life. I'm fasting in Ramadan and I'm performing this piece. And I was actually asked by the person who hired me to make it a point that you need to wear something ethnic for this concert. So like I had just gone to Iraq, so I bought like a black thobe. I had a scarf that I wore around my shoulders for the performance, and that I can send you that picture if you want to see
Yeah,
it.
please do. Okay.
But like I thought about that, I was like, okay, this is bigger than what I could have ever realized. And like again, I might be the only South Asian in this group right now, but it's like our cause is so much bigger than
Right.
just like the one number in a certain situation.
Amazing. And as a special treat, you've agreed to offer to play for us today.
Yes.
What's the piece that you've selected and why?
I think since a lot of our conversation today was rooted in spirituality and religion, I'm going to play a piece that has been a huge part of my life, and I played it just this past weekend in Dallas. It's by a very famous Qawwali singer named Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan.
I know who that is.
And the piece is called Wohi Khuda Hai, which will also be on my YouTube channel. So today, everyone would get a little teaser of my version of this piece.
Okay, we appreciate the teaser, and I just want to introduce you all today. Playing on the viola, I present to you Rizwan Jagani. Thank you so much, Rizwan. That was amazing. And as Rizwan said, you can listen to the full version of that piece on Rizwan's YouTube page. As we wrap up, Rizwan, I want to thank you for being my guest. I want you to know that you are an inspiration, you are courageous, and I know that you are definitely helping many gay Muslim boys and men and women come to terms with their truth and also possibly helping to strengthen their relationship with Allah. I can't thank you enough. I will be following your career closely.
Thank you.
And for all those listening, I will have Rizwan's contact information, including all his social media links, in the description of this podcast. Rizwan, I think you're amazing.
Thank you so much.
You are amazing.
Truly an honor to be with you today. Thank you so much for having me.
The honor is ours. Thank you. I'm Farhan Dalla. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's episode of Elevate Your Life, a transformational podcast. I hope today's conversation has elevated you in some way and inspired you to connect, move, and meditate. I'd really appreciate your support by following and rating this podcast. Come back soon and join me for another transformative conversation.